It's here. Bob McKenzie's final prospect ranking is here, and it reveals some difficult decisions for Kent Hughes, as some players have maybe moved around from where you remember. We got to get into that. Plus, Elliotte Friedman reveals some very important details on the salary cap coming up, and Shea Weber makes the Hockey Hall of Fame. There's a ton of stuff to talk about on this episode of Habs Digest, and we're going to get right into Shea Weber, Jesse. He's the first topic. Now, if you're more interested in some of the salary cap stuff, feel free to jump ahead. The Bob McKenzie mock draft, we'll have timestamps for all of that, but we wanted to talk first, give credit where credit's due, Jesse, to Shea Weber, as this is an incredible thing that he did here. Shea Weber is now a member of the Hockey Hall of Fame, which kind of caught me off guard a bit. I mean, I know us Habs fans have nothing but respect for him and what he gave to the organization after that trade for PK Subban 1-for-1 so many years ago. Led the team to a cup final there with Carey Price, with all sort of the old guard, and unfortunately, his career has sort of come to an end in an unceremonious fashion. Utah hockey team legend, but this kind of surprised me, Jesse. Not that I think he's out of place in the Hockey Hall of Fame, but just I wasn't expecting him to get in first ballot.
Amazing to see for our former captain, right? I think it's because he played the game right. I was just always such a fan, right? Such a great ambassador of the game, great leader, the original Man Mountain, right? Yeah. So amazing to see him kind of get that recognition. He's missing that elusive Stanley Cup, which was so close yet so far away for us with the Habs here. But at the same time, it's like, I think obviously the skill is important here, but really that character, those leadership abilities is what's taking him into his place into the Hockey Hall of Fame.
Yeah, he had a great relationship with all the media, like so many people, and he had a ton of success internationally as well. I think, 2 Olympic gold medals, 2 other international tournament gold medals. He's a legend of the game, so just wanted to give credit where credit's due. Shout out to Shea Weber, former captain of the Montreal Canadiens. Really, really cool stuff. But we're going to move in to what Elliotte Friedman said now, Jesse, and this has some serious implications. So Elliotte Friedman on 32 Thoughts. Now, I tried to find the timestamp. Feel free to go check out the podcast. I couldn't find the timestamp the second time, but pretty sure I heard this right. You can go check this other places, but this is something he said, Jesse, and it is actually unbelievable. Really, he said the salary cap will increase to roughly just under $93 million for the 2025-2026 season. Now, as we know already, the salary cap is heading up to $88 million for next season. Again, up from I think 83 or 84 this season, of something around there, Jesse. So we're seeing basically a $10 million increase over the next 2 years. And what this means now is not only, if this does end up being true, which it should end up being true, though, I guess we'll wait and see, the Nick Suzuki, Cole Caufield contracts are going to be absolutely unbelievable. And if we can get Slaf and Guhle extended long-term this offseason, if you can get Slaf in now for 7.5, 8, even 8.5, whatever it is, that's going to look so much better in a couple of years when you're talking about relative percentage of the cap. Because if he signed today for the same percentage of the cap as Caufield signed for, he'd be signing for over $8 million. And if you sign it as a percentage of the cap in the future, we're talking in the nines. So I think this is the time to get these things done. But not only that, Jesse, it opens up a ton of room for the Habs having all these long-term contracts. As long as they don't have the crazy overpay on them, it opens the door in the future for more players. And maybe even in the short term, if you can get a veteran for a couple of years, you could afford to pay maybe $1 million or so more than you might have originally been willing to because of this. This is crazy.
And you have to feel like this is really speeding up the timeline for when both Cayden, Guhle, and Juraj Slafkovsky will get their extensions, right? You kind of want to do this sooner than later. Juraj's going to see comparable contracts, kind of coming out, right? So I think Kent Hughes is definitely going to want to get ahead of this. But again, the great implications of this as well is what perfect timing for the NHL. This is great news for the NHL, but also for the Habs, right? Just as they're looking to come out of their rebuild and really start being more competitive, we're seeing that the cap is going up just at a time where we're looking to spend a little bit more. So really amazing to see, again, how everything is just lining up right now for the Habs.
Yeah, it's really, really cool. Now, even this jump to next year already makes the contracts we have seem so much better, but this just opens a ton of questions, right? Does this change the Habs free agency approach this year? I don't think it does, but I'm actually seeing, Jesse, I'm sure you've seen it too, a lot of fans kind of saying, these veteran people want to start winning now. It's kind of all over Twitter. Now, it's probably not the majority, but it's definitely a vocal minority. And I want to hear from you guys down below. Does this change your idea of how to accelerate the rebuild? Because the cap is kind of projected to go up so much over the next couple of seasons. With that, you can maybe afford a bad contract or two, maybe not even a bad contract, but a contract that's a little more than you would have originally paid. Let us know, because I don't know about it, Jesse. I'm seeing some people say you don't want to go, I saw this on Reddit somewhere, you don't want to go the way of the Blue Jays. You bring in a ton of veterans, your young guys don't get a chance to shine, but if the Habs have a chance to do something small, It could be. I'm just saying maybe we might see some interesting changes.
Absolutely. And we expect to see moves this summer, still some major ones, but only to lead the way for the real home runs, I think, next summer. I think that's the smart way to do it. Get more competitive, but we don't want to just go all the way first, right? We know there's a lot of competition right now in that Eastern Conference, Atlantic Division, and everything else like that. So I feel like Kent Hughes is going to bide his time, and he's going to know the perfect time to strike.
Can't wait. We're seeing some uncertainty about Draisaitl and Edmonton too. Now we can talk about that some other day, but for now, we got to go into the certainty. The draft is coming up Friday. If you guys didn't know, we'll be going live between 6:30 and 6:45 on draft day, Friday, June 28th. Tune in to the channel to share in all that draft glory with us. But we got the most important draft rankings, Jesse. Every year, everyone's waiting on Bob McKenzie's final rankings for his draft. Now, I want to clarify that when Bob McKenzie does these, TSN does this is not a mock draft. This is simply a ranking of his top 10 prospects that is informed by 10 different NHL scouts for 10 different teams, taking all that information into account, plus his own. What are his rankings? Let's get into it. Let's just show it up here. Number 1, no surprise, Celebrini. And to the dismay of maybe some Habs fans, you see Ivan Demidov, the now listed at 6 foot 1/2 an inch winger from the MHL, is number 2 on the list. He was actually, Demidov, the only player that was consensus top 5 among all 10 scouts other than Celebrini. Everyone else, Levshunov, Salayev, Lindstrom, all had at least 1 or 2 people not even ranking them in their top 5. And you can take a look at the rest of this list here. Very defense heavy. But Jesse, the thing that I learned from this is I want to say first, like, there are so many scouts that are high on different players. Some scouts had Salayev as high as 2. There were 2 different scouts that had Konsta Helenius at their number 3. There was even one of these scouts had Speck at Seneca in their top 5. But I think one thing that we're learning from this, we're going to get into some specific Demidov stuff in a second, is that there's so much uncertainty here. And I think you said it great before the show. It's like, even if you have like a top 4, top 5 pick, you might need a plan B, plan C.
Absolutely. That's it. And what's a little bit tough to take away from this, which is like the holy grail, the Bobby Mack list of draft rankings, is that like, it's looking very unlikely that Demidov falls to us at that 5th spot. We're seeing a lot of attention for him within that top 5. So for me, that's my key takeaway is Demidov, unfortunately, may not be coming to Montreal. But Josh, I am so happy to see Cayden, Lindstrom at least our saving grace in this mocked to Montreal at 5th, because we know Bobby Mack, he's got a great pulse on all of this, right? It's huge to see, right? And we know, like, even if like Demidov doesn't go 2nd overall, right? It's still not really a lock that we get him, just because we're seeing so many other teams really having interest. But I'm okay with Cayden Lindstrom, right? The way that he's more of like a goal scorer than a playmaker, which is what this team really needs. Just his aggressive style of playing hockey and everything else like that. Like, you can't help thinking, Florida Panthers, they won a cup, on large part because of Matthew Tkachuk. Bring him over. They just started becoming a better playoff team immediately. And I don't think that Cayden Lindstrom is Matthew Tkachuk. I think Cayden Lindstrom can throw a proper body check and everything else. But just right away, I knew when Florida was making that trade, okay, they're going to maybe take a step maybe down a little bit in the regular season, which isn't really so much even the case last year, but only to be better in the playoffs, right? Because when you add players like that, that's when these type of players really perform, right? So I just see it as being a really solid piece for a winning team that Kent Hughes is looking to build.
Yeah, there's a ton of crazy stuff here. Seeing Salayev so high, like, I mean, it makes sense that he's that high. Like, Anton Salayev is a fantastic player with a ton of crazy potential. 6'7" and one of the most mobile defensemen in this draft, despite being that height. But Jesse, I'm also seeing some other people talking about, if Montreal gets to pick a defenseman, there's so many options. You got like Sam Dickinson, you got Zeev Boyum, and who knows who's going to be there. But I wanted to change gears now and talk a bit more about Demidov before we move on. And I wanted to bring up some quotes here. This is an anonymous scout from Bob McKenzie's ranking here. I have no problem personally ranking Demidov at number 2, but I couldn't assure you my team would take him there if we're picking 2nd overall. There's a lot more that goes into it now, especially that high. And not only that, Jesse, that was followed up by Scott Powers, the Chicago Blackhawks writer for The Athletic. He said, "I'll be surprised if it's not Levshunov." He said this on Twitter, basically saying that Levshunov is certainly going to Chicago at number 2. So, I'm still very much okay with Cayden Lindstrom landing in Montreal. And it seems like Levshunov's going too, but there's still a world, Jesse, where Anaheim and Columbus take Demidov and Cayden Lindstrom. And at this point now, we can just repeat our takes over and over again, but, the more I look at, especially Bob's list and hearing what scouts have to say and hearing the uncertainty, it's like, almost now more than ever, I feel much more comfortable with absolutely anybody. Yes, I have my preferences, but like, I don't think there's a single guy that I've seen on like maybe the top 10 or 11 that I'd be like, wow, I really disagree with that pick.
I'm happy that you feel that way, Josh, because I'm getting nervous as I've seen these mocks. I really don't want to miss out on a Demidov,
True.
or Lindstrom. We see Demidov, ranked solidly at number 2. I wholeheartedly agree. This is where he should be. For me, he's the second most talented player, possibly the first most offensively talented player here in this draft, right? But just because, again, we're seeing those rumors, just because maybe Bobby Mack has him at number 2 doesn't necessarily mean that he's a lock there. But I think even if he doesn't go at number 2, he's getting taken before Kent Hughes is at the podium. But if there is a way, that we can get a Cayden Lindstrom, I think he fits what this team needs so much. I could see in a world where really, Cayden Lindstrom becomes our 2C, moving Kirby Dach to the wing, where I think he could still be a really effective player. Imagine Kirby Dach and Cayden Lindstrom together on that second line. Like, you'd almost be curious to actually throw Slaf in there. Like, imagine
the size.
Huge line that would be, even though Slaf is so good with Cole and Nick, when you got Kirby Dach and Cayden Lindstrom, like, you're definitely tempted to throw him in the mix there. I think that would absolutely just be an amazing experiment to see and would probably lead to some very effective hockey.
I just can't wait to see what's going to go down in the draft. And like I said, guys, join us between 6:30, 6:45 Eastern. We'll go live. The draft will be at 7. We'll be watching that whole thing well past Montreal's pick. And if you want to share all that with us, stop by. It's going to be an incredible time. But what do you guys think about this mock draft? Are you now maybe more sure than ever that Demidov's going to go before Montreal gets there? We'd love to hear from you down below. Because that'll do it for this episode of Habs Digest. If you enjoyed, leave a like, comment, subscribe to the channel. Thank you everyone for tuning into the videos and tuning into the live streams every single day. I'm Josh Gosse, my co-host Jesse Poirier. We'll catch you in the next one.